Right.
And then ADUs.
Well, let's talk about tricky.
Yeah.
I guess the hardest part with ADUs is there's no comps, right? So nobody has, or not a lot of people have a house, put on an ADU and turn around and sold it. Anybody that's doing ADUs is keeping them and Airbnb them or renting them. So there's not a lot of comps for us to look and say, hey, this ADU is worth this much. So what I've been doing, general rule of thumb, is before lumber prices increased to where they are now, I was giving things 50%. So you could get, a 600 square foot ADU built for 100 grand. So I always give them like 50 grand, and I was able to find comps that could do that. Right now, I have a buddy that just put an ADU on his place, and the price like tripled. He's paid it's like 300 grand for a 600 square foot ADU. So I don't know what the new numbers are with what's going on over the last 3 months, but what I've been doing is giving 50% of the value of the cost to build.
So the same thing, if you can show that in that market, in Bay Park, this ADU was added, and it's sold close model, similar house, sold for X amount more, whether that was cash or not cash, and that happened a couple of times, right? Like, it's hard. It's hard for you to prove that. It's going to be really hard for these guys to prove that are putting their livelihood on the line. So I think until a standardized model comes out for that, we're going to struggle with ADUs.
Yeah, like on the appraisal form, there's no spot for ADU. Like there's a spot for pool, landscaping, hardscape, view, site, all that. There's no accessory dwelling unit spot. So there's spots where we can write that in, so we have to write it in. And that being said, that's when you can go further away to get comps, is when you're trying to bracket something like an ADU. So if you have a house that's sold in Golden Hill that has an ADU, I would look over the entire metro area to find a comp within the last year that has an ADU. Because chances are that's going to be the only comp that's out there. So on all the zip codes, you know.
Another tricky thing with ADUs is square footage. You know, you can have a 400 square foot ADU, you can have a 1,500 square foot ADU. How do you give it? I mean, you know, how do you give it value? You know, you have two totally different. You know, it's like a house. You have a 400 square foot house versus a 1,500 square foot house. There's obviously a big value difference. So that's where lies the tricky part is where do we give, how much adjustment? And like Dave said, with the cost of everything going up because of COVID, I mean, you know, ADUs, I don't know. I mean, you're not going to get true value.
It's probably detrimental, actually.
It could
right
be. I mean,
Just
really.
if you're going to put an ADU on, hold the property.
Yeah.
For
Just
sure.
to confirm, I mean, because you're not factoring in any potential income from that, right? Like, that would be like a separate unit.
Well,
Sure,
so that's a potential future use of the property. That's not the as-is use of the property. We're doing the appraisal as is.
Right.
We can do prospective appraisals, and I've done them for lending institutions and for developers, for sure. Like we can do an appraisal off blueprints. We don't have to have a house there.
Right.
But that's a perspective. So then we're doing an income approach and a cost approach. We're not doing a sales comparison approach.
That's what I'm saying, you don't mix, like, here's a comp sales approach mixed with an ADU income approach.
No.
Right, there's that's.
Yeah, so there's different approaches to value, different ways we arrive at our opinion of value. And for lending purposes, it's a sales comparison approach, so comps. And what you're talking about is what's called an income approach. So
The owner might be using it for income, but that's not how you evaluate it for comp.
no, but I mean, and that has value, right? Because as long as you can develop a cap rate and a gross rent multiplier, then you can figure out what it's worth, for sure. So that's a lot of of commercial appraising and multifamily stuff.
Right.
So.
Cool, guys. Any last questions? Was this helpful?
Yeah.
Do you think these guys know what the hell they're talking about?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jared.